paper with you. Great. Might as well get that out because you'll have some opportunities to use your pen, pencil, and paper a couple times in this talk, especially in the first part of the talk. All right, so far we've talked about green infrastructure in general. We talked about different types of stormwater control measures or green infrastructure that you can use. All right. We've talked about co-benefits or additional ecosystem services that these practices provide. And then yesterday, we spent a fair amount of time talking about what types of pollutant removal mechanisms, both hydrologic and pollutant proper, like concentration change centric removal mechanisms they have. And we spent some time on rainwater harvesting. So now we're going to keep going in this sort of more ultra urban or heavily urban context and talk about another practice that tends to fit in well in more densely developed areas, all right, which we describe a large chunk of India, certainly where a large chunk of people live in India, as densely developed areas. This particular one, I think, has a fair amount of application here on the Roorkee campus. So how about that picture, y'all? Not a good-looking picture? I sent it back home to my friends and family and said, here's my new people right there. And they were like, where's Fernando? I said, he took the picture. All right. I'll make sure that picture gets out to everybody. It's a good one. Now, I love my friend Fernando, but this is the only picture where he got the dome of the building. And the other pictures where we're doing the thumbs up and all, it got cut off. And I'm like, nothing we can do about that. So anyway, this is the picture we got. Everyone looks very handsome. You should feel good about yourselves. All right. What is this an image of? Anyone know? It's old. This is a map of the Roman Empire. This is how big the Roman Empire is stretched, all right? And it's important for you to understand that in Western thought, almost all of what we trace our roots to go back to the Greco-Roman Empire, all right? Eastern thought, you've got centers of thought here. You got centers of thought in China, all right? So, but Western thought, you know, Egypt is a part of it, but everything passed through Greece and Rome. All right, now why am I talking about this? It's because the Romans are famous for building roads, right? Building pavement. And you may or may not have ever heard this saying, but there's a famous saying in, it's from these days, but there's a famous saying in American and British English, all roads lead to Rome, okay? So Roman road building was super important. And this is how the Romans built their roads. They had curbstones like you see here, all right? That larger stones and aggregate and gravel would rest against. They had basic widths, and very importantly, they had drainage ditches. Why do you think the Romans in their standard cross section had drainage ditches? Why did they do that? Why do we do that today? Anyone have an idea? Say it again. Yeah, you got it. The Romans knew that they had to get rid of the water, all right? Because if the water stayed for long periods of time in the pavement would fail, all right? So this mentality associated with pavement has lasted, I don't know, certainly in the footprint of the old Roman Empire, and in the places where the people that lived in the old Roman Empire eventually migrated to, which would be the Americas, this mentality went on for about 2,000 years. Okay. It's really older than that, but from the point that they came up with the road design, 2,300, 2,400 years. So if you take a look at the Roman roads, you'll see the crown, you'll see the ditch that conveys the water. The Romans knew this caused pavement to fail, all right? And the thing is that you can visit Roman roads to this very day. This is in Pompeii, a really cool spot to visit, I might add. Pompeii, and you can still see the Roman roads, you can still see the curbing, you can still see the drainage ways. It all seemed to work. And so since people were like, well, this is what works, let's not mess with it. All right. Now, therein lies a bit of a challenge. And the challenge is if I'm telling you that we want permeable pavement, what does the word permeable pavement, what does that convey? What does that mean? If someone says, I want permeable pavement, how's that different from standard pavement? How's that different from Roman pavement? Yeah, the Romans wanted the water to go out and away. What we're saying with permeable pavement is we want the water to go through, all right? And for people based on 2,000 years of pavement design, they got very uncomfortable with this, all right? But the idea is still the same, that water does have to eventually leave permeable pavement, all right? So let's take a quick look at what permeable pavement actually is. Here's a good cross section of it, all right? This is somewhat similar to what we have on campus here. Not exactly the same, but you can see up at the top here, we've got blocks. Then we have small aggregate. You guys use the word aggregate? Stone. Small aggregate that you place the concrete blocks on. You could use bricks. People will use bricks. Or there's other types of pavements, but the blocks go on a small bedding aggregate, and then there's a larger aggregate, and then when it rains, the water will pass through the surface of the permeable pavement, boom, like this, and then fill up the permeable pavement, all right? And then, due to underdrains or water soaking into the ground, you will see the water vacate the gravel storage layer over the course of a few hours or a few days. It depends on exactly how permeable the underlying soil is, all right? So that is the basic way that permeable pavement works. And while it's a little bit different from the old Roman idea of shedding the water off the road and getting it away, it's still the same in that the water goes away. It doesn't just hang out there for indeterminably long periods of time. All right. Now, when we say permeable pavement, there are multiple types of permeable pavements. The one that I suspect you will see the most in India is this first one here called permeable interlocking concrete pavers. There is an example of, and it is referred to in the industry as PICP, okay? Permeable interlocking concrete pavers, PICP. Now, another version of it, an older version, is something called a concrete grid paver. I actually saw some of these right here on campus, all right? And I will, not this exact type, but something very similar. And when we go on our little tour today, or in the afternoon, we'll walk and you'll see something that looks like it is actually a concrete grid paver. So here it is working, all right? And that's how it should work. Water goes out and it soaks through. That's a concrete grid paver. The water is soaking through sand, all right, in the surface of that. Have you seen blocks like this on campus? Oh, yes, I have. All right. This type of block with a modest change can actually become a permeable interlocking concrete paver. All right, that's a really important point. And this is part of the reason why I'm like, you know what? I think PICP could work a lot on this campus because it almost, I'll say, fits with the culture that the facilities have on campus. You guys are used to having segmental pavers, all right? So this paver that you see all over on campus, I took this picture last night. I apologize for not being quite as sharp as I'd like. Some of you guys saw me walking around last night with Fernando. It's fun. We got that picture. Okay, so that's the type of that's the type of permeable pavement associated with these blocks that I think is the most apt to be able to be applied here. All right. But there are a few other types of pavers permeable pavement out there. Pervious concrete and pervious asphalt are probably most notable. You can see an American quarter up here. That coin's about this big to provide scale. When you look at the pervious concrete, what do you observe? Just looking at it. What is it? How does it look different from normal concrete? What's that? There's voids. That's number one. Is that what you said as well? Or do you have another thing? There's this other thing. What's that? Yeah, it's less cement. There is cement, but there's a little bit less of it, which allows voids, and it's rough, right? It's standard concrete, it's smooth. This stuff is rough. And so those of you, how many of you have had concrete design as part of your curriculum? That's great. Great, 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 great. Essentially what they do is they take out all the fine aggregate. There's no sand in there, all right? And they have an air entrainment agent that gets added, all right? So they take out the fines, they add an air entrainment agent, and you can get that. Now, I'm not going to go into exactly how it's constructed, but I will say that there are some nuanced construction techniques that you have to follow that you don't do when you build standard concrete that enables it to look like that and work, all right? This happens to be the most popular permeable pavement type in North Carolina. The block pavers that we talked about earlier are second, all right? And then there's another type. This is asphalt. Again, do you see, it looked pretty similar, right? They take out all the fines. They have just larger aggregate stones, and it's a rougher surface. Asphalt will not work here. Anyone want to guess why? I'll give it to you this way. We don't have it in North Carolina either. But they do have it in a state in the north. States in the north use it. Why wouldn't states in the south use it, but states in the north could use it? Did you say temperature in there? Yep, you nailed it. That asphalt is an amorphous solid, which means if it gets hot enough, it melts a little bit, right? And so it gets hot here. I was told 45 degrees is not uncommon in June. Remind me to never come to Rookie in June. I have no desire to be here in June. All right. I'm very happy here in October, November, December, January, February, and probably March. But I don't want to, I just let you know, I don't want to come here when it's 45. I'm old enough that I don't have to do that type of thing anymore. Okay. So I'm like, I won't come in June. But permeable pavement is even permeable asphalt's even less happy about being here in June. Because at 45 degrees, especially when the sun is shining, it will get extremely hot. And as it gets hot, it will melt ever so slightly. All right. Not melt so much that you couldn't drive on it the next day, but it would melt so much that just a little bit, and then it would solidify at night. You know, it gets cooler at night, solidifies, and it melts a little bit the next day. And eventually, that cycle of melting, solidifying, melting at the surface turns pervious asphalt into impervious asphalt, which is what you could have started with to begin with. All right. So this particular pavement, it isn't, you're not going to see that here. You're not going to see that here. And you probably won't see it in nearly all of India. Now, when I've been in China, I have seen pervious asphalt used. Even there, I think it may get too hot for it, but they do use it some. So perhaps it would work in climes to the north that are less hot. Now, here's your pervious concrete, and you can actually see the pores. Well, I'll just do it from the screen here. You can literally see the pores, and it's not hard to envision all these pores being connected so that the water just goes right through it. All right. And y'all, that is how it works when it's working. But there are times where it doesn't work, and we'll talk about that. Here's an example of it used at a large car park in North Carolina. You get an idea. It tends to be about 15 centimeters thick, okay? When they use pervious concrete, it tends to be about 15 centimeters thick. All right, talk about why that's important in just a little bit. And then we've got these plastic grids, and they'll fill them up with soil or they'll fill them up with gravel, and they do let water perk through. All right. Believe it or not, and the soil, obviously the grass growth one does have an appeal. It looks good. Let me ask you guys this. Do you think a soil-filled grass permeable pavement that is healthy, okay, working like it should, do you think it lets more water or less water pass through than pervious concrete once it's been installed and is working? Okay, so everyone got this? The choices are this grass, okay, or pervious concrete. Which one say the grass will let water soak through faster? More grass, okay. How many are like the pervious concrete with the holes will work faster? In this case, the minority wins. It actually works a lot faster. We have looked at infiltration rates of pervious concrete after it's been installed, and you can get 25 to 50,000 millimeters per hour of infiltration through that. What's that? Through the concrete. It's because there are holes. It's literally, imagine pouring water into empty space. It just goes. Now, where it hits the rocks, it's obviously not passing through that, but it just gets directed into those gaps. That grass infiltration rate might be 50 millimeters per hour. So I'm talking about 50,000 versus 50. All right. Why is the grass so much slower? 50 millimeters per hour is pretty good. All right. That's pretty good. And it's because grass doesn't grow in thin air. Grass has to grow in soil. And grass grows better when your soil is not pure sand. So that means you need to have smaller soil particles for healthy grass growth. That means you're going to have some clays. You're going to have some silts. Still mostly sand, but some clays and some silts. You put clays and silts in a media, what happens to the infiltration rate? It goes down. Now, the use of grass helps stabilize the infiltration rate. It helps make the infiltration rate in general resilient, okay? Which means it won't keep going down, but it tends to get stabilized, I don't know, 50 millimeters per hour, 100 millimeters per hour. That tends to be what the infiltration rate is there. Still good, but not as good, not even close to as good as remember this, a newly installed pervious concrete, or for that matter, a newly installed PICP, all right, where those gaps are filled with gravel. All right. So these are the different types of permeable pavements that are out there. Now, do you think that there is potential for permeable pavement to be used on this campus? What do y'all think? It's sort of a baked-in question because I wouldn't be spending so much time. But I took a bunch of pictures, and this is only a small number of all the pictures I've taken, of spots that could or might not be good applications for permeable pavement, notably PICP. And a big reason for that is you already use segmental pavers. It's already part of the campus aesthetic. And so to convince people to have a permeable plaza, a permeable parking area that looks almost like what they currently have, my hunch is it wouldn't be that hard. All right. Certainly from an aesthetic standpoint, it wouldn't be that hard. Now, there are some key things that we will spend some time on between now and lunchtime that will help you identify whether or not it's a great location, an okay location, or a bad location. So not everywhere on campus that has segmental pavers translates to being a good location for PICP. But I can tell you right now that one of those three pictures I'm showing you looks to be an outstanding location for PICP. I'm not going to tell you which one. You're going to figure that out, okay, as we go through. In fact, in this particular case, I see one great one pretty good one, and one not so good. All right? Well, we'll worry about that over the course of the next hour and a half. So, what are good locations for permeable pavement to be used? Like, where can you use them? And I'm going to go ahead and show you some examples, mostly from the United States. Not all of them, but most of them are from the United States. Anytime you've got pedestrian traffic, okay? So think about a plaza, maybe where you have tea, you go out and have tea, have lunch, all right? Anytime you've got pedestrian traffic, that's a possibility for some permeable pavement. This guy here is actually standing on a grassed walkway, a permeable pavement covered with grass walkway. Why you'd ever need it, I don't know, but he's standing on that. All right. The next application, and there's a fair amount of the rookie campus, the IT campus, that kind of, even though it may not be residential, parts of the campus obviously are residential, but that don't look that dissimilar from this, all right? Residential uses are good ones. This is a very rich person's house in North Carolina. Does anyone like hockey, ice hockey? I wouldn't guess it's a popular sport here. Ice hockey is probably the fourth most popular sport in America. American football, baseball, basketball, ice hockey, and then soccer/football. That's the rankings. So we're soccer's number 5. Don't feel bad. There's not a lot of cricket fans. I'm sorry. I think it's a great sport. Because remember, my favorite sport's baseball. So if you like baseball, you're going to probably like cricket. In fact, are there any like cricket games going on this week on TV? You got any big cricket games going on? Yeah? You call them cricket matches? Is it a match? Is India number 1 in the world right now in cricket? Yeah. I know who the biggest rival is. It's got to be Pakistan, right? Got to be Pakistan. I get it. Who's your second biggest rival? England? Australia. Right. I could see the Kiwis being, I mean, not the Kiwis, the Aussies being pretty. The Kiwis, are they any good at cricket? New Zealand? They're okay. There's a lot more Indians than our New Zealanders, I'll be honest. You guys should destroy them in cricket. You probably do. Okay. Well, someday when I come here someday and there's a big cricket match, I want you guys to say, hey, Professor Hunt, let's go watch some cricket. And I'm going to sit next to you. You like cricket? Propose you like cricket? A little bit. I want to go with a fan. I want someone who likes cricket. I want you to tell me what's going on, and I'll tell you how that relates to baseball. It's like a plan? Wait, did you say the IIT has it? Wait. Okay, I'm coming. Hold on. This room is so big. Plus I don't hear great. So now I'm going to hear, this is important. There's a cricket match versus the Aussies. Oh my gosh. And is it at home? It's an Optus Stadium. Where is Optus Stadium? Somewhere in Australia. Well, let's see. Can you tell me what the line is in case I want to bet on it? Just kidding. Is sports betting popular here? Thank you for that. So that's a big one. So on Sunday, maybe I can watch a little cricket when I'm down in Kerala. All right. Oh, why I started telling you all this? The guy who lives in this house was a hockey player, professional hockey player. And that house cost in the year 2005, 20 years ago, that house was you only see a part of the house, was $2.4 million. Woo, boy, professors don't live in that, let me tell you that. Okay, along the street, and we saw this possibility here on the Rookie campus, side street parking is a possibility, all right? We've seen it used with some success along the edge of a street, okay? And then there's low-use parking lots, so car parks where the traffic is daily, maybe. That's a good example. Here's one, pervious concrete, PICP, pervious concrete going on. And then there's where the traffic loads are higher, maybe, but people will just park. The main driving lanes will be asphalt, but then the side parking will be permeable. In this case, it's permeable concrete, all right? Here's some that are concrete grid pavers, all right? So the idea is that your parking stalls can be permeable, but the driving lanes are asphalt. And look, is that different from this picture here? No, it's the same type of thing. Your driving lane's asphalt and the parking is permeable, all right? Alleyways, absolutely. On the right here, that's in Chicago. Chicago is the third largest city in the United States. It's probably a medium-sized city for you, 3 million, 4 million people. In the United States, it's our third largest city. And that's an alleyway right through the heart of the theater district, all right? So understanding that it's not a major thoroughfare, but it is something where the traffic loading is okay, that you can have permeable pavement and expect it to work. And here's another example in Chicago of a very, very large overflow parking lot, all right? And that is a baseball stadium where both Pope Leo, you might have heard of him, and President Obama, you probably have heard of him, their favorite baseball team plays in that stadium right there, all right? So you can see lots of different examples of where permeable pavement can be used. Now, the principal question that we get asked from a design perspective, really the first one is where can I use it? Like what are the conditions where using permeable pavement makes sense, all right? The second question that's sort of very site specific is once you pick your permeable pavement, how much gravel do I need to have, all right? And that gravel does two things. What are the two things that the gravel underlying those pavers does? Two things. What's that? Okay. IET Bombay. You just keep bringing it. He's exactly right. The answer is one, it stores water. All right. The gravel stores the water. And then secondly, it provides, you called it stability, it provides structural strength. All right. So there are loads, all right, that come onto the pavement. They're called trucks, lorries, cars, tuk-tuks. They're not that heavy. That's not a problem. All right. So the pavement has to be able to handle the load that it is subjected to. All right. And for segmental pavers and for asphalt, some of you probably learned flexible pavement design if you took civil engineering. Okay, great. So the gravel is what carries most of the load. This is a flexible pavement design. So the gravel carries most of the load. All right. And so you got to make sure that whatever gravel depth you pick, it can store the water and it can carry the load. All right. So let's focus first on loading. There are, we'll call it 4, but you may go with 5 factors. Oh, wait, I can use chalk. This is old school, guys. And you know what I love? I love old school. Do you even use the term old school? Yes? Great. Sometimes I wonder how much from the United States makes it out of America. You never know, right? If you live in America, you don't really know. All right. So there are 4. This is so exciting. Well, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. There are 4 factors for, I'm going to abbreviate it, permeable pavement strength. Oh, we're already down 1. Strength. You guys read that okay? See in the back? See it okay? Okay, great. 4 factors for permeable pavement strength. Give me one of them. What if you're trying to figure out how strong your permeable pavement needs to be? What are the things you need to know? Say it again. Strength of the aggregate. Okay. Yeah. So, how strong is the aggregate? And we're just going to stop at aggregate. Okay. 5 factors. Okay. Apparently, my chalk skills are not as good. My chalk is now down to that. I probably won't break it though, so that's a plus. So how strong is the aggregate? And if you might add aggregate plus blocks, it's the aggregate plus, like how strong are the individual components? So I'm gonna go ahead and add, my gosh. Blocks. All right. Next, someone who hasn't volunteered something today. What's that? Well, that is what we're going for. Oh, but yeah, you're right. We'll put that down. 6 factors. Okay. So the aggregate, the thickness, this is what we're trying to determine actually, but that's fine. Thickness of the aggregate. Okay, great. Thickness of the aggregate, which is what we're trying to determine in the end. What's something else? Say it again. Yes, great. The strength of your soil. Strength, okay, of underlying soil. Excellent. What's another one? I am going to include that as part of a larger. So basically, not just the strength of underlying soil, but how quickly does the water leave the underlying soil? That is coupled with some other very important factor. What's that? The permeability, it's the underlying soil. We're going to assume it's a high permeability. Let me put it to you this way. It matters how frequently wet it is at the bottom. All right? So what are the factors associated with that? Permeability of underlying soil is one of them. What's the other? What's that? Yeah, knowing the water table. I'm gonna put that one to the side. We are gonna talk about the seasonally high water table. All right, that's in the side. We'll go there in a little bit. It's a good idea, by the way. The mic. What's another one? What's that? Yeah. I'm going to skip, because I do want to go to the permeability of underlying soil. I'm going to skip that one. Okay. Vehicle loading. Let's tease back this idea that the soil has an underlying infiltration. The underlying soil has an infiltration rate. We're worried about how frequently water is present in the bottom, because water being present in the bottom of your permeable pavement weakens it, okay? Which means you have to make your gravel depth even deeper if it's not as strong, all right? So underlying soil infiltration rate is one of the things. What's the other factor associated with is water present in the bottom of my permeable pavement? Well, let's say we're going to avoid that. All right, that's a good question. We actually want to avoid that, which that's why I put it on the board. That's a good point. We're gonna get to it a little bit, but we're moving that to the side. What's that? Slope, from a strength standpoint, it's a minor thing. From a water storage standpoint, it's a huge thing. We'll get to slope in a little bit.
What about mixing ratio?
What's that?
Mixing ratio.
The mixing ratio? For pervious concrete, that would be a factor. Okay, I'll make it try to clear as I can make it. How does the water get into the bottom of the permeable pavement? What brings water to the pavement? Rain, right? So weather. So the climate. There are climate variables. So the climate, all right, the climate, all right, plus infiltration, all right, of the soil. This is actually a very important piece, all right? And then something you won't have to deal with here or most of India, but as it also relates to that, we would call these environmental factors. Freeze thaw, all right? You guys familiar with freeze thaw? It's not something you have to worry about much here. You go up north a little bit, head towards that little mountain chain that y'all got at the end of the country. You're going to worry about freeze thaw up there. All right. And then the last one, I don't expect you guys to get it, is how tolerant are you of wear and tear? How tolerant are you of bumpy conditions? Okay. So basically, it's what level of service are you comfortable with? How much are you willing to let it wear and tear? Level of service. Those are the factors that you would include to figure out how thick your pavement needs to be, all right? Now, good job, y'all. You did a nice job. And here is a lot of that in a nutshell, all right? There is a way to determine that. You guys maybe have seen these nomographs, use nomographs for sizing. This is a nomograph that helps you determine how thick your aggregate needs to be, all right? It's called a structural number. I am not going to teach you how to do that. But I do want you to know that this nomograph, in addition to another calculation put together, is that's how you determine how thick the aggregate needs to be, okay? So this nomograph plus another calculation that you compare to the structural number is how it's determined. Now, what is most important is that for the vast majority of permeable pavement applications, especially those placed above sandy gravel soil, all right, what you need to have is about 15 centimeters of gravel. Not that much. Why? Why do you think we don't need a whole lot of gravel? How many of you think 15 centimeters of gravel is pretty minor? It was to me. It's pretty minor. So why do you think we don't need more gravel? You know what the main reason is? Is that we don't subject permeable pavement to heavy loadings, right? We're on campus. I mean, how heavy is the pavement load on the campus? This campus. We've been walking this campus. You feel pretty safe walking on the street? Other than sometimes people on bikes might smash you, right? But it's not like that big truck's going anywhere. No big trucks. They don't really have a lot of cars even. Like it's a lot of tuk-tuks, a few cars, a lot of scooters, a lot of people riding bikes, a lot of people walking. None of those things, God bless you, none of those things really adds a lot of weight, a lot of load to the pavement. So 6 inches or 15 centimeters, even that is conservative. Okay? Even that is conservative. All right.
Is it possible to add the thickness or?
Yeah, great question. What if you do have trucks? You certainly can add gravel to make it stronger to handle trucks. Yes, you can. I'll give you a case in point. There is in South Africa, the port of Durban. It's on the Indian Ocean, okay? The port of Durban has a piece of that I don't know if it still is, but 15 years ago, 20 years ago, a piece of that was permeable. Have you ever looked at what moves around on a port facility? Very big containers, like monster heavy containers. And yet they were moving around on permeable pavement. The gravel depth that was used there was about 1 meter. Okay. So if you have really heavy equipment that moves slowly, you can absolutely make permeable pavement work. But you do so by adding gravel beneath it. All right. That's a unique situation. And I assume it's still working. But when I visited, I've been to Durban. I didn't get to see it, but when I was visiting Durban, Durban has a very high population of people from India. Wasn't Gandhi in Durban? I think Mahatma Gandhi practiced law in Durban, South Africa. Is that a yes? Okay, great. I'm pulling stuff from recesses in my brain. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So when I visited, they did confirm that because I had heard that at a conference in Argentina. And then I asked, they said, yeah, they did that. So that was a little while ago, and I asked. I assume it's still there. But the point is that you can design these systems to handle where the one use that you'll not see replaced is, right on the main highway between here and Delhi. That's never going to be permeable. That will never be permeable. It's too many vehicles passing, too many heavy vehicles passing. All right, so you won't ever see that. Okay, so that's part one. I will commend you. You did a good job. In fact, I might say a great job. All right. So we now have established that you don't need a lot of gravel to support the vehicles that are going to go over it. So now let's talk about how much gravel you need to support the water you want to store. All right. I'm going to give you an equation for it in a second, and you're going to get your pens and paper out, and you're going to answer this question. But again, this is what it generally looks like. You got a sub base. You don't have to have an under drain, but you often will have an under drain. We'll talk about the under drain configuration a little bit later. And you got this surface area, the bedding. So basically the water pours through the surface, stores in the aggregate, drains out the bottom, or drains out an under drain. All right. And so essentially, the way it works is you try to figure out the amount of rain you get. It fills up. This is a pervious concrete slab. And then if it keeps raining, and you get some water to exfiltrate, water's leaving it while this is going on. And then water's also seeping off. All right. Well, what if you start getting seep off or water running off or flowing out? Thank you for all of this. I can't thank you enough. This is honestly incredible. I am spoiled for drink options. If everyone could be so lucky. So let's say it has rained 15 millimeters and all of a sudden your pavement cross section is full. What can you as a designer do to have it store 25 millimeters or 30 millimeters of rainfall? What can you do? You guys are going, what can you do? There's one very simple thing you can do, provided you don't have a problem with the seasonally high water table. Take a guess. If you're a designer and this is the amount of storage you currently have and you need to double your storage, what do? I love my team. The answer, guys, is actually pretty easy. You add more gravel. Isn't that cool? Basically, you figure out how much water you need to store. And I need to store that much water, and you add gravel. Now, what's the issue of adding gravel? There is an issue. Is it doable? Usually it is, unless you have a seasonal high water table issue. Okay, thank you for this. Got to get it.
Elevation of that area will go up, I think.
Yeah. Either you have, if the seasonal high water table is restrictive, you'd actually have to try to figure out how to raise your elevation, or you would decrease the elevation of the bottom of your cut to where you would add your gravel. And the main reason people wouldn't do it if they don't have to is it costs money. That's the main reason. It just costs money. All right. So it's actually pretty simple to determine how much gravel you need to store water. And it's this equation right here. And I'm going to give you, just take a good look at it, I'm going to give you, it's not a pop quiz, but a little exercise in about 30 seconds where you're going to use this information and calculate how much gravel you need. All right? It's actually one of the more important things I'm going to teach with you all today. So what we want to know is, first of all, how much water what storm size are we trying to capture? At a minimum, you'll want to capture whatever your water quality depth is. If we're in Rookie, what's our water quality depth? 35 millimeters. All right, so you're going to use that. Then you need to know how much run-on you have. Does anyone want to guess what run-on is? I don't even know what a number. What is run-on? We talk about run-off all the time. What's run-on? What does it sound like? Run-off is water that's leaving, right? What's run-on? Water that's coming, okay? And so you want to know how much water is coming to your permeable pavement. That's run-on, all right? I'm going to spend a bit more time, probably after we have our break. Yep, after we have our break, talking about what an ideal run-on ratio is, all right? But we want to know the amount of run-on. And then you have to determine your minimum gravel depth. That's essentially what the exercise is going to be. What is N? What's N in geotechnical engineering? Porosity. So your gravel porosity will tend to be between 0.3 and 0.4. I use 0.33, 33, just because it's easy. It's also conservative. It's conservative. Most gravels are a little bit higher than that, but I like to use 0.33. And then one of you mentioned slope earlier, all right? You would have to adjust your depth associated with how much slope you have, and then add freeboard. What is freeboard? I don't know if that's a uniquely American term or not. Freeboard is extra capacity. Like, oops, I made a mistake. Let me put in an extra factor of safety. That's freeboard. All right, that's how you determine your depth of gravel. Okay. Associated with water storage. Remember, 15 centimeters is enough for structures most of the time. So here you go. We've got this application in Rookie, IIT Rookie. It is here. This is an example. Imagine a fraction of this road is draining to this. Okay, I want to put in a 1,000 square meter footprint. It's a long run. Okay, of PICP. I have 500 square meters running onto it. So go ahead and assume it's flat. And I'm going to have a seat here. I'm going to drink a little Coca-Cola. And y'all are going to tell me how much gravel you need. This is exciting. A little bit of a break. Professor Ojo, would you like some tea? Because I'm happy to pour you more tea. You got one? And they did. I'm loving it. Oh, there's more. I have dark tea. Oh my gosh. I'm just telling you, I'm just the luckiest guy. This is quite good. What is it? This is also masala. Delicious. Almost has a honey taste to it. They're working hard right now. Absolutely. We can do it. If you want to tea break out exercise, you can get it.
We'll break at 11 for 10 minutes.
We'll break at 11.
Yeah.
You guys smile. Work hard, actually. Be down there figuring that out. Boom. I'm going to text this. I'm going to tweet this out. My gravel need to be to store the water quality event in Rookie. All right. The 35 millimeter storm. How deep does my gravel layer need to be to store that? And ideally, you report it in centimeters. Let me give you one more minute, and then we will work out the answer together with my chalkboard. Love having a chalkboard. You guys haven't even seen me drink Coca-Cola yet. Get ready, it's coming. Love Coca-Cola. All right. I'm not going to put you on the spot, Professor Vinarasi, But are you doing the you're not doing it. Once you get to become a professor, you don't bother doing the calculation. Like, I'll let other people do it. I get it. I'm that way too. I'm like, I'm not gonna do a calculation. All right. Let's see what we got here. Oh, you know what? Oh well. Is there you know what I realized I don't have? An eraser. It's coming. Thank you. I can do it off this. Let me go low here. Okay. Oh my gosh. Let's try that one. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and work this out together. What's our water quality storm size? 35 millimeters. All right. So 35 millimeters is the same as I want everything to be in centimeters to compare. It's 3.5 centimeters. All right. That's our water quality event. Now, when it rains 3.5 centimeters on a slice of our permeable pavement, how much water and the ratio and the area that drains on, the run on, how much water is effectively being exposed per unit of permeable pavement? All right. So we have 1,000 units, meters squared, of permeable pavement. We have 500 units of standard asphalt. So to multiply the equivalent as to what is being exposed to the permeable pavement, we need to multiply this by what number? I think I heard you say it. By 1.5. All right. So 3.5, 1.75. I think that's equal to 5.25. Is that correct? If someone wants to check me, you won't hurt my feelings. Is that a right answer? That's the equivalent. That's the equivalent rain. Thank you so much. That's the equivalent rain that is being exposed, that the pavement's being exposed to. Okay, then we have to store this. That's not the right answer in terms, that's not the end answer, 5, because what do we actually have to do? Every centimeter of storage depth, we're actually losing 2/3 of that to gravel, right? And so to get the depth of the, interesting, that was mine, telling me it's time to stop. To get the actual depth, you take that 5.25, divide it by our porosity, okay, so that's our N, all right? And then you end up getting, if I remember correctly, 15.75 centimeters to store the water quality event. Now, how many of you plan to be designers, engineering designers someday? Some of you probably already are. Would you ever spec 15.75 centimeters? No. You'd never spec that. That's too precise. So that's effectively equal to 16 centimeters. Now, for a perfectly flat, permeable pavement, that's perfect. One thing I haven't included is freeboard. Freeboard! How much should that be? I probably would take a look at 16, add about 10 to 15%, and make that a good number. So I would make that 16 something to the tune of, okay, 16, and then I add freeboard. And honestly, this is one of those cases where best engineering judgment matters, all right? A lot of times it's like, well, what does it matter if I'm not quite right? But you know that construction isn't going to be perfect. And so people will add 10%, they'll add 20%, somewhere in there to the freeboard. It is best professional judgment. I'm sure people would say 10% at a minimum. So I'm going to go ahead and say if you pick anything from 17 to 20 centimeters, that would be the answer. And there it is. You guys going to be ready to do that next time? Because guess what you get to do this afternoon? You're going to get to make that calculation. All right, again, and this time it's going to be part of a design that you're going to give Professor Vinarasi that she might turn around and hand over to some folks on campus that'll try to make 1, 2, or 18 of these current segmental paver applications into something that's permeable. How exciting is that? All right. It's break time. How long do you want for your break? 15 minutes? Let's go with 15 minutes. So we'll come back at 1:20. Sound good? Is everyone good about that?